and welcome to Brave Little Buckaroo. I'm Tamsin and this is my special Vlogmas series, How I Do Stuff, where each day I'm sharing a tip, technique or tutorial for how I do stuff. Over the last few days we've been working through the quilting and binding process, and today I'm going to show you how I join the ends of the quilt binding after I've attached it to the front of the quilt. Now there's probably loads of videos about this on YouTube already, but as with my other videos, I thought it would be nice for me to have a place to send my own clients when they have questions about quilting and binding. And in the process, it may also be helpful for some of you. So that's today's video. I'll show you how I do it. Okay, so I've got my quilt over on my big cutting table. I would normally sort of just wrangle this around on my sewing table, but my sewing table is also my computer desk and where all my paperwork goes to die, so I don't have the room to show you nicely, but it can just be done at your machine. But I've got it laid out on my table here. I've got about 18 inches where the binding is unstitched, and that's the space I'm going to use to join them together. So the end on the left hand side I'm going to open up so that it's right side up, and the end on the right side I'm going to open up so that it's wrong side up, and then I'm going to pull my quilt over, fold it up a bit, whatever I need to do to join these pieces together, right sides together on an angle. And then I like to just overlap them ever so slightly so you can see where the points start and end. Can you see that? So just here, just ever so slightly, it's overlapping a little bit. And that's so that when I get to the machine, I can see where I'm aiming for. Because if these are perfectly lined up, when you get over here, or when you're up here, you can't see where the point is. Just ever so slightly overlapped is how I like to do it. And then I pop a couple of pins in there. Make sure I don't grab the backing underneath there. Okay. So they're perpendicular, just ever so slightly overlapping. And the other reason for just slightly overlapping them as well is so that you get a nice tight, like you have to stretch it slightly to sew it on, because you don't want to get to the end of sewing it onto your quilt and have like a pucker or a bubble because there's too much space in your binding and not enough in your quilt. So tiny bit overlapping I find works for me. And then if you want to be extra cautious, we can again go through here and then just draw a line with a pencil or an erasable marker of some kind. We're going to sew on that line, and the line will be on the wrong side and folded over multiple times, so you won't be able to see that. So I'm going to take this over to the machine and I'm going to sew along that line. Okay, so my quilt is kind of screwed up in a ball over here on my desk, but that's okay because the only thing we need to worry about is this bit right here. And what we're going to do is just sew straight down this line. Okay, so when we open that out, that looks good. We'll trim off the excess. And now we're going to just make sure on our quilt, before we trim off the excess, because there's no coming back from that, we're going to lay the quilt out a bit as straight as we can within the confines of our space, and just make sure that it is going the right way and that it is going to match up and be able to sew along there. Because if you sew this in the wrong direction, if you sew your diagonal somehow the wrong way, it's not going to fold out nicely, and you'll know very quickly. But if you know after you've already trimmed off the excess, then it's too late to fix. So I'm just going to stretch that out, and that looks fine. It's going to go in there perfectly. And then just trim off this excess. Scissors if you have them, or snips, because that's what I've got close by. About a 1/4 inch seam, doesn't have to be super accurate. And then I'm usually just going to press that open with my fingers. I'm not going to drag this all the way back over to an iron at this stage of the game. So I'll just finger press it open. And then fold it over. And then I like to, sorry, it's a bit tricky to see. It's a big quilt in a small space. So I've got from here to here that I need to sew. And I usually like to pop a few pins in there just to make sure that if there is any slack, it's evenly distributed. You could use clips as well, but I'm a pin girl generally. There we go. That's all done. And then I usually start just slightly before where I ended. So you probably can't see, but my stitching ends here. So I'm going to put the needle down, 1/4 inch, 1/2 inch before that. I'm going to try and drop my needle in exactly the same point. And then I'll probably even backstitch a couple stitches to make sure that's nice and strong. And then I'm just going to sew on down with a 1/4 inch seam allowance. And this has worked out pretty much absolutely perfectly. Now, sometimes you will find there's a tiny pucker in either the quilt or the binding if you haven't got them exactly spot on to match the length. But if there is a pucker in either, by the time you fold this over and then fold it back on top of itself, it's usually, you can't even see it anyway. So I wouldn't be too stressed about any tiny imperfections like that. But luckily, this time it turned out great. So the binding is now stitched all the way around. It's fully joined and connected. And what we're going to do next is fold it over like this and then fold it around to the back. And then this has to be sewn down to secure it. Now, some people are happy to do that on the machine. I never get a good result whenever I've tried it that way. So I always hand stitch my binding down. And that is what I'm going to show you tomorrow. And that's how I do it. I hope you found that helpful. Please let me know if you have any questions about this or any of my other videos that I've shared during Vlogmas. Tomorrow I'm going to show you the last step of binding, which is how to hand sew it down to the front of the quilt. If there's anything you'd like to see me do, please let me know and I'll try to add it to the list. Okay friends, that's all I've got for you today. I hope you're happy and well. I hope you're having a fantastic December. I hope you're nearly ready for Christmas. I'm not. Okay, I love you. Bye.